There is a teaching in Jewish tradition so old, so specific, and so consistently observed across 20 centuries of Jewish homes, from the palaces of medieval merchants to the cramped apartments of immigrants, that it cannot be dismissed as folklore. It concerns 5 things, 5 specific categories of object, habit, and energy. Things that, according to the sages, do not merely sit passively in your home, but actively invite poverty in, not symbolically, not metaphorically, but through a precise spiritual mechanism that the Kabbalists mapped with extraordinary care. Most people have at least 2 of these in their homes right now. Some have all 5, and they wonder why, despite their efforts, despite their intelligence, despite their genuine desire to build something stable and lasting, abundance seems to slip through their fingers like water. Today, I am going to tell you what these 5 things are, where the teaching comes from, and what the sages said you must do instead. Stay with me, because this is not a list of superstitions. It is a map of the invisible laws that govern the energy of every home and every life that passes through it. We begin in the city of Saft, in the Galilee, in the 16th century. Saft in that era was perhaps the most spiritually concentrated city in the Jewish world. It was where Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, known as the Ari, the lion, taught a small circle of disciples a vision of the universe so precise, so intricate, and so breathtaking that it would reshape Jewish mystical thought for the next 4 centuries. The Ari did not write his teachings, he spoke them, and his student Rabbi Chaim Vital recorded them. Among the teachings Vital preserved were a series of strikingly practical instructions about the home, because the Ari understood something his contemporaries sometimes overlooked. The spiritual life is not lived in the abstract. It is lived in kitchens and doorways, in the daily management of what we allow to accumulate in the spaces where we sleep and eat and raise our children. One evening, a young student came to the Ari with a question that had been troubling him for months. His name was Reb Binyamin. He was a man of learning and genuine piety, someone who prayed with intention, who gave charity regularly, who studied Torah each morning before the sun had fully risen. And yet, his household struggled. Month after month, there was never quite enough. Opportunities that seemed promising dissolved. Unexpected expenses consumed what small reserves he managed to accumulate. "Rabbi," he said, "I have examined my actions. I have searched my conscience. I cannot find the source of the blockage. Is it possible that the problem is not in what I do, but in what surrounds me?" The Ari looked at him for a long moment, with those eyes that his students described as seeing further than other eyes. "Walk me through your home," the Ari said. "Describe it. Tell me what is in it." Reb Binyamin described his home, and as he spoke, the Ari stopped him 5 times, each time at something specific, each time with the same quiet gravity, as if confirming something he already knew. When Binyamin finished, the Ari said, "You have invited poverty in through 5 doors. You did not do it deliberately. You did not do it with knowledge. But the laws of the home do not require intention to operate, just as gravity does not require you to believe in it in order to pull you down." He then taught Binyamin what those 5 things were, and why each one, according to the deep structure of Jewish spiritual law, functions as a channel through which the energy of lack enters a household and establishes itself. What I am about to share is drawn from that teaching, as preserved in the Kabbalistic tradition, expanded by the later authorities of Musar and Hasidic thought, and confirmed in the experience of countless families across generations, to be not superstition, but living, operative truth. The first thing, broken objects that are neither repaired nor removed. This may seem on the surface like simple tidiness. It is not. The Kabbalistic teaching behind it is precise and profound. In the mystical framework of the Ari, every physical object in a home carries within it a spiritual dimension. what the tradition calls a nitzotz, a spark. This spark reflects the state of the object's relationship to its purpose. A functioning object radiates a quality of shleimut, of wholeness and completion. A broken object, one that has lost its function but remains in the space, radiates the opposite quality. It becomes, in the language of the Kabbalists, a keli shi nishbar, a broken vessel. And broken vessels do not simply sit inertly in a space. They broadcast the energy of incompletion, of damage, of things that once worked and no longer do. When a household accumulates broken objects, the clock that stopped working 6 months ago and still hangs on the wall, the chair with the broken leg propped in the corner, the appliance that no longer functions but has not been thrown away, the home begins to breathe an atmosphere of arrested potential, of things begun but not completed, of repair deferred, of the assumption, gradually absorbed by everyone who lives there, that broken is normal, that incomplete is expected, that things do not need to be whole in order to stay. The sages were explicit. A broken object must either be repaired promptly or removed from the home entirely, not stored in the back of a cupboard for later, not moved from one room to another, repaired or removed, because the home is a vessel, and a vessel with cracks cannot hold what is poured into it. The second thing, stale or rotting food left in the home. In the Torah tradition, food is not merely nutrition, it is a carrier of blessing. The Hebrew word for bread, lechem, shares its root with the word for war, milchama, but also with the word for connection, lehichalem. The rabbis noted this apparent paradox and resolved it with characteristic precision. The struggle for bread, the daily dignified effort to provide sustenance, is itself a form of sacred battle. And the bread that results from that battle carries within it the energy of the effort that produced it. When food rots, when bread goes moldy, when fruit blackens, when leftovers are forgotten at the back of the refrigerator until they become something unrecognizable, that sacred energy does not merely dissipate, it inverts. It becomes, according to the Kabbalistic understanding, a source of spiritual impurity in the home, not in the dramatic sense that the word impurity sometimes conjures, but in the precise technical sense, a reversal of the energy of blessing into the energy of its opposite. The Ari taught that a home in which food is regularly allowed to spoil has, in effect, developed a relationship with waste, with the energy of things provided but not honored, of blessing received but not respected. And this relationship, established through repeated small acts of negligence, gradually shapes the household's overall orientation toward abundance. If we do not honor what we have been given, the tradition asks quietly, on what basis do we request that more be given? The practice the sages prescribed is simple but demanding. Never allow food to reach a state of rot inside the home. Check regularly, compost or discard before spoilage sets in, and cultivate, in the daily management of food, an attitude of active gratitude toward what has been provided. This is not merely hygiene, it is spiritual housekeeping. It is the maintenance of the home's relationship with the energy of blessing. The third thing, mirrors that are cracked or clouded. This teaching requires the most careful explanation, because in contemporary culture, the idea that a cracked mirror carries negative energy has been so thoroughly reduced to superstition, the cliché of 7 years of bad luck, that its actual depth has been almost entirely lost. The Kabbalistic teaching on mirrors begins with a remarkable observation. The mirror is the only object in the home whose entire purpose is reflection. It exists to show you yourself. And this function, the act of self-perception, of seeing one's own face, is, in the mystical tradition, deeply connected to the faculty of self-knowledge, the ability to see oneself clearly, honestly, and with both humility and dignity. A mirror that is cracked does not simply show a cracked image, It shows a fragmented self, a self that is divided, discontinuous, seen in pieces rather than as a whole. And the Kabbalists taught that the images we see of ourselves, particularly in the vulnerable early morning and late evening moments when we most often look in mirrors, shape, over time, the internal image we carry of who we are. A person who habitually sees themselves in a cracked or clouded mirror is, without being aware of it, habituating themselves to a fragmented self-image. A clouded mirror is, in some ways, more insidious. It does not shatter the image, it dims it. It makes the viewer less visible to themselves. It cultivates what the Musar tradition calls blindness to one's own reality. The Ari's teaching is this: the mirrors in a Jewish home should be clean, clear, and whole, because the home's capacity for honest self-reflection is literally reflected in the condition of the surfaces through which its inhabitants see themselves. This is not superstition. It is an observation about the relationship between the physical environment and the quality of consciousness it cultivates. The fourth thing, unpaid debts that are denied, hidden, or never spoken of. This teaching moves from the physical to the relational, and it is, the sages said, the most destructive of all five in its long-term effects on a household's relationship with abundance. The Torah treats debt with extraordinary seriousness. The book of Proverbs states plainly, "The wicked borrows and does not repay," not "the wicked steals." The wicked borrows and does not repay, because the tradition understood that an unacknowledged, unaddressed debt is not merely a financial obligation. It is a spiritual weight, a specific kind of unresolved energy between two people that, if left to fester, corrupts not only the relationship between them, but the internal atmosphere of the debtor's entire life. The Kabbalists used precise language for this. An unpaid debt creates a chov, an obligation, that functions like a hole in the spiritual fabric of the household. Money and opportunity that enter the home find this hole and drain through it, not magically, but through the entirely comprehensible mechanism of what happens to a person who carries unacknowledged debt, the low-grade chronic guilt that prevents full presence in new opportunities, the anxiety that closes the mind to creative solutions, the subtle dishonesty that begins to spread from one unacknowledged debt to other areas of life, the way that shame about money prevents the honest conversations through which financial situations actually improve. The practice the tradition prescribes is not the immediate magical elimination of all debt, which is rarely possible. It is the movement from denial to acknowledgement, from hiding to honest reckoning. The person who looks at their debts clearly, names them specifically, creates a plan, however modest, for addressing them, and communicates honestly with those to whom they are owed. That person has removed this source of spiritual blockage from their home, even before a single shekel has been repaid, because the blockage was never the debt itself. The blockage was the refusal to see it clearly. The fifth thing, a household without gratitude practice. This last teaching is the most subtle and the most far-reaching in its effects. The sages taught a principle they called hakarat hatov, the recognition of the good. They observed, across centuries of careful attention to how human beings and their circumstances interact, that households which practice regular, genuine acknowledgement of what they have been given exist in a fundamentally different relationship with abundance than households that do not. This is not a teaching about forced positivity. The tradition does not prescribe false gratitude. It prescribes honest recognition, the daily deliberate act of pausing to see what is actually present in one's household and naming it with genuine acknowledgement. The Kabbalists taught that the act of recognizing a blessing, truly recognizing it with attention and intention, strengthens what they called the kli of that blessing, the vessel that holds it. It makes the blessing more real, more stable, more capable of growing. And conversely, the habitual taking for granted of what one has been given weakens that vessel. It allows the blessing to thin, to diminish, to be present without being felt or built upon. The Ari prescribed for his students a specific practice before the first meal of each day to pause and name 3 specific, concrete blessings present in the household. Not abstract things to be theoretically grateful for, but present realities. The bread on the table, the health of a particular person, the light coming through a specific window, named, acknowledged, received. A household that issues that daily invitation says to the source of all provision, I see what you have given. I am paying attention. I am here, awake, grateful. And a household that says this faithfully, the tradition teaches, is a household that abundance recognizes as a place it is wanted and will return to. Now let us speak plainly about why all 5 teachings point toward the same underlying principle. Every single one of the things the Ari identified in Reb Binyamin's home represents a relationship with present reality characterized by avoidance, denial, or inattention. The broken object not repaired, the avoidance of restoration, the rotting food not removed, the inattention to blessing, the clouded mirror, the avoidance of honest self-perception, the unacknowledged debt, the denial of honest reckoning, the absence of gratitude, the inattention to what is already present. The Jewish tradition teaches, and this is one of its most consistently verified insights, that abundance cannot take root in a household oriented toward avoidance and denial. Not because the universe punishes that household, but because avoidance is, at its core, a refusal to engage fully with reality. And abundance, always present at the source, always flowing, requires an open, attentive, honest vessel to flow into and be held. These are not 5 unrelated rules. They are 5 expressions of the same spiritual posture, honest, attentive, grateful engagement with the reality of one's household. And this posture is the foundation upon which genuine, lasting abundance is built. Reb Binyamin returned home that evening from his conversation with the Ari and looked at his home with new eyes. He saw the broken chair he had been meaning to fix for 3 months. He saw the clouded mirror in the hallway. He opened the cupboard and found food he had forgotten, well past its time. He sat down with the ledger he had been avoiding and looked for the first time in months, honestly at what he owed and to whom. And before he went to sleep that night, for the first time in as long as he could remember, he paused and named 3 things in his household that represented blessing. He fixed the chair the next morning, he cleaned the mirror, he cleared the food, he wrote letters to his 2 creditors, not promising what he could not deliver, but acknowledging the debt and committing to a specific, realistic plan. And he continued his evening gratitude practice without interruption. 6 weeks later, he returned to the Ari. Rabbi, he said, I do not know how to describe what has happened. The external changes have been modest. I have not received a windfall. My circumstances have not transformed overnight. But the household feels different. I feel different inside it. And I have begun to notice, that I am more present in conversations, more creative in my dealings, more willing to take the steps I was previously too burdened to take. 2 opportunities have emerged in the past month that I might have missed before, simply because I was too weighted down by the things I was not looking at. The Ari nodded. The poverty was never in your ledger, Binyamin. It was in your avoidance of your ledger. You have opened your eyes. Now the household can breathe. That is the teaching. Walk through your home today, not as a critic, not with shame, but with the honest, compassionate attention that the tradition calls for. Look at what is broken and unaddressed. Look at what has been allowed to spoil. Look at the mirrors. Look at the debts that live in the back of your mind, unnamed and unconfronted. And ask yourself, am I practicing gratitude for what is already here? None of these changes are beyond you. All of them are within reach today, and every one of them removes from your household a channel through which the energy of lack has been flowing, and creates in its place a channel through which blessing can enter. Subscribe to this channel. Each week I bring you another piece of this ancient and extraordinary inheritance, the wisdom of Torah, the practical teachings of the Kabbalistic masters, the spiritual laws of the home and the heart that have sustained Jewish families through conditions of remarkable difficulty into lives of meaning, wholeness, and enduring abundance. Share this teaching with someone whose home you care about. You may be offering them a key they have been needing without knowing its name. And in the comments below, tell me, which of these 5 things did you recognize in your own home? Your honesty is an act of courage, and courage, the tradition teaches, is the first movement of change. Wisdom lives in honest seeing, and seeing, once begun, cannot be undone. Shalom.